well, lately I've been obsessed with fake beards. So I uh,
Yeah,
I bought this
I
yak
totally.
hair beard from
It's
Russia,
really great.
and I like. I don't know why, but this is really thrilling me. And I built it onto a wire frame, and I sewed it onto the frame, and it's a wonderful bit of costume. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. But this is
Wow.
part of what my life is I'll explore something and just see where it takes me.
Now, wow, now I want to build one of those, and one for my hair. Yeah. And
There we go.
I really love this. Yeah, that doesn't look so bad. Hey, so talking about your beard, how people react when you create these apparently useless or unconventional experiments or things, because that's something that really happens to me when I create something or build something. People are like, "Well, why did you build that?" Or they don't.
Right.
Sometimes they don't understand why, and I try to explain them that it's the pleasure to build something with your hands, the pleasure to be able to learn something new and create something. But
Yeah.
I don't know, not everyone get that.
It's the I mean, some of my friends get the same rush from watching a game of soccer or golf.
Yeah,
Some of them get the same rush from racing cars on the weekend. Some of them get the same rush from reading books. For me, it just happens to be when I put weird stuff together into objects, those objects change the way I think
yeah,
about the world while I'm working with them. They change the way I think about things. Actually, just to give an example, for this beard, I didn't know how the netting here on the mustache was going to stay close to my skin. So I just used sewing thread around spring wire and sewed it carefully. And then I noticed once I did, it was way more robust than I thought. Well, this actually teaches me a whole different knowledge base about sewing and the ways that I can use it mechanically as an engineering tool. Uh, and that for me, just like what you're saying, like I get a genuine endorphin rush. It is like a high for me when I see this stuff. And frankly, not only do I sometimes have to explain why I want to build this weird stuff, but when I'm done with it, I'll often place it on the bedside table in my bedroom so I can wake up and stare at it every morning because I
yeah,
need
yeah,
to have eye contact with the things that I'm thinking about.
yeah. That happens to me. That's weird. Yeah, but that happens to me. Yeah, when I'm creating something, I want to have it near to me because I can see it
Yes.
and think about what I can improve or change. When you
It's
rest, you get new
it's
ideas.
like our
So
it's like our hands are hugging, right? It's like we're taking the world and kind of holding on to it. That's what it feels like to me.
yeah, yeah. I learned. My dad showed me this technique of the lost wax casting using
Wow.
centrifugal
Yeah.
force with your hand with a chain. He taught me that, and as I was a kid, I watched him, and I thought, well, that looks incredible because you have the torch and you have this boiling metal, and you have to spin it with your hand. And I thought to myself, well, that looks so manly. I want to do that sometime in my life. And I learned that thing. I started building my own rings or a
Yeah.
jewelry, for example. And I'm telling you this because um, when and we talked about this earlier. Learning something new is incredible, and this is what keeps us moving. But uh, creating and experimenting does it still surprise you after all these years?
Yes.
Like,
Constantly. Constantly,
because
even with
I love the
materials that
people
I
who
know
tend to,
about forever.
yeah, I
Go
love the
ahead.
people think that when you learn something, that's it. You don't have to learn anything else. You already know that. So they get bored and they don't try something new. That's the
Right.
point that I'm trying to cover
But
here. No?
right, but when your dad showed you lost wax casting by creating an artificial gravity, spinning the chain, you're learning so much more than just about replacing
Yeah,
low temperature melting wax with a high temperature melting metal. You're learning about exploiting gravity with a simple chain and almost no effort to get an effect that would require a lot more equipment under any other circumstances. So I'm curious for you if that trick with gravity might have been something you pulled in a later project, like you took one piece of what your dad had taught you and used it in something else.
Well, I've used those things to build things in my channel, but
Mm-hmm.
mostly I try to teach people how to build and create these things,
Yeah.
because people think that everything is already made and done. So I try to inspire them to show them
Yeah.
simpler techniques so they can try them themselves. And that's really important, because the next question is something that I want to learn. I'm very interested in. And how do
Yeah.
you structure the stories you tell? When you build something, you're creating a story. Later, I will give a conference about the importance of keeping a record of the things you build. When we're creating something, we have this rush of creation, so
Yeah.
we don't have a register, or we don't take pictures, videos. We are so inspired by building this stuff that we don't have a way to show to people what we created, the story of the thing we built. So how do you structure the stories you tell, and what's your advice for people to
Oh,
make a
my
register of
my advice
things?
is photograph everything. You will never regret having a record of the things that you made. And I was lucky in that my father was a painter and an artist and did a lot of work documenting his work. And as a visual artist, there was a really specific way he documented it. He took 5 slides of each painting. So we had 5 sets of a record of each of the pieces that he made. And I,
Okay.
like we all do, I was copying my father. And so by the time I was 17 or 18, I was photographing everything that I made just to have a record. Um, and it
And you used to
there's
use
multiple.
a 24 millimeter camera, right?
Absolutely,
Not
yeah.
a
I would
digital
go to
camera.
the photo store and get a contact sheet. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because now it's easier to take pictures and have a record of everything, but we still forget to do that. That happens
oh,
to me a lot.
it, it, in fact, one of the things I remind myself to do is every day at the end of the day in the shop, I take a picture of what's on the bench using my phone. And frequently later on that night, I'll be sitting there and thinking, oh, I want to take a look at this thing I'm working on again. And I'll pull up my phone and look back at the thing. And it allows me to keep it in my consciousness. It allows me to keep on solving the problems that I've got to solve on the next day.
Okay, and so if I want to make a story about the thing I built, how you tell the story? You tell it in chronological order? Maybe, I don't know how to tell a story about a make. I don't know
Well,
if that question is.
yeah, no, that makes total sense. Well, there's several stories going on, and we all have different ways of telling them. There's one is the story of the actual build, in which case it can be a pain. It can be tedious to tell the story of the build, but you want to take pictures of each of the stages of construction so that if you were showing it to your mom or showing it to someone who didn't know how to do what you were doing, they would come to some understanding of it. But
Yeah.
then there's also the story of why you built it, right? That's another story. So
Okay, I love
sometimes I'll be inspired by an object and I'll take a picture of the thing that I built next to the object that inspired it. And then I can look at the two and sort of help myself understand why that inspiration was there in the first place.
that. Okay, I love that one.
And then
Yeah.
actually there's the final thing for me is the photograph of the thing in use. So I make a lot of costumes, and costumes are one of my favorite things to build, but the costume is not done in and of itself once I finish it. It's not done until I wear it for a reason.
Yeah, and give it life. Give life
So
when wearing
the
it.
wearing of it is its final coming out, is its final being birthed from the chrysalis, as it were. And then I have pictures of those moments of trying it on for the first time, trying it on for the second time, putting it on stage. Each of those is a different aspect of the build, really.
Okay. I love those points. I already wrote it down in my book. Um, Thank you. Thank you. It's a good advice for everyone that's watching this,
Absolutely.
and for me as a creator, as a content creator on YouTube. Um, and I want to ask you something. Um, Motivational figure, you think that the family's influence in the decision of being a maker, or can anyone be decide to be one? I have this example. I watched this interview that you did with Tom Sachs, and he told
Hmm.
you that um, he didn't know how to use a screwdriver, but as he
Yeah.
grew up, he had his girlfriend that showed him how to weld, and that inspired him, and left him without a girlfriend, but a lot of art created with a welder, right? So I'm asking you this because there's a lot of people that think that they don't have any skill, so they can't
Yeah.
be a maker. They're interested in building things, but since they don't have this, let's not say tools, they don't have the idea of how to start.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think that families influence a lot of in this? And how can we inspire people to start building
Yeah.
their own stuff?
Look, I think everywhere that somebody can find encouragement is important, whether that's from your family or your friends or your teachers or your employer, wherever you're going to find encouragement is really vital. But I want to actually zoom out a little bit because I hear that a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I could never be a maker." And I think they're thinking of like, well, they're thinking to themselves, well, I could never make a hammer like this from scratch. Well, sure, that's not necessarily something most people can do, but I like to broaden and widen the definition of making to say that anytime you reach out with your point of view and make something from nothing, you have made something. And that might be a song, it might be a dress, it might be a table, it might be a business plan. Any one of those things can be a creative enterprise. And coding, computer coding, that's making, sewing is making, drawing, cooking, all of these things. And
Okay.
it's not about what you end up with. It's about what the process gives to you as a person. Because look, I'll give this example. You go to a party and you don't talk to anybody, or you go to a party and you have a few conversations. I'm For most people, the second one is much more invigorating because you've interacted with human beings and you've talked about your shared experience. Whenever you make something from nothing, you're having a conversation with your culture, with your whole world. You are contributing your point of view into something you built. And that is now part of a cultural conversation. That's the soup we're all swimming in.
Okay. So for you, what's the difference between a maker and entrepreneur, for example? Or they can be the same thing? Because I know that a lot
Ab-
of maker places make these great things that becomes a big enterprise of a product. So is there
Mhm.
a difference?
I don't
How
think
do you
that
think?
I don't think that there has to be a huge difference. I'm not interested. I mean, I think the way we think of an entrepreneur as somebody whose goal is money. And I think that, having an artistic temperament, I recognize that money is necessary to get along in the world, but I am not interested in it for its own sake.
Yeah.
Um, that makes me slightly more idealistic and of a slightly more artistic bent. But there's no reason that a maker can't be any other profession as well, because that's one of the things we do as humans. We share our experience with each other, and we share it through conversation, and we share it through relationship, we share it through our actions, and we share it through the stuff we make.
Okay. So what's the limit of being a maker? You said that maybe coding, creating art, cooking. What's the reach of being a maker? Everyone is a maker then? How do you see that?
It's it is I think that everybody has this experience of getting good at something. So
Yeah.
if you examine getting good at something, you would realize that, let's say it's the guitar. The first time someone shows you a guitar, it's a mystifying bunch of wood and wires. And then you start to actually learn how to make a chord, and it sounds lovely, and you feel the vibration against you, and you start to actually play a little bit. And then all of a sudden, you play two chords, and you like the way they sound together.
Yeah.
Now you have a point of view about the sound you like. That right there in that moment, you've become a maker. That's what making is. That's your point of view contributing to something that didn't happen before.
Okay. I like that. Well,
I
I
have to
want to
grab
ask
a
you.
charging cable. Hold on just a second. I have to grab a charging cable for my computer. 2 seconds.
Yeah. ¿Cómo ven? ¿Qué tal la entrevista con Adam? How do you see this interview with Adam? It's a great pleasure having him here. Um, I don't know. I don't consider myself a maker, but I'm also a maker, so it's cool to be talking with Adam and have this experience, right? Everything okay, Adam?
Perfect. Everything's perfect.
Perfect. So now you were losing battery on your computer, on your laptop.
I
So
was,
I want
yeah.
to talk about resources, because I read in your book that you have this people ask you about if you run out of ideas, but you say that there's no, you never run out of ideas, and I think the same thing. The problem is resources and time, right?
Yes.
So here in Mexico and Latin America, people have a lot of ideas, but we have not so many resources.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people wanting to create. There's a lot of people that are a platypus. Do you know what platypus is, Adam? An
Yes.
ornithorhynchus? Yeah. This is a concept. I don't know if you ever heard it before. This is a concept that taught me a good friend called Juan Aguilera. He told me this person. I used to have a company, and he bought it from me,
Yeah.
and he wanted me to work with him because he told me that I was a platypus, an ornithorhynchus, and I didn't understand that. And he explained to me that this animal is a mix of animals. It's an egg-laying mammal, and has a beak and a tail, and can swim and can do this and that. And he wanted me to work with him because I knew how to make a lot of things. And I think
Yeah.
that that's valuable in a company, but I think that many people in Latin America are platypus. They
Yes.
they they know how to make a lot of stuff. They have a lot of ideas, but they don't have the enough resources to create.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have any advice for them. I tried, for example, to show them, as I mentioned earlier, to show them how to create with simpler techniques or cheaper materials. But I don't know if you have any other um, uh, idea that you want to put out there to help them
Well,
create.
I think I like thinking about this from the experienced maker, because the landscape shifts quite a bit. When you and I were in our teens, the most expensive thing to us was the materials, but we had
Yeah,
all the time in the world, right?
exactly.
So to a young maker, time is the asset you have tons of, whereas now time is incredibly precious, and I don't have
Yeah,
much of it, but I can afford the materials that I want. So at the
yeah,
beginning of making, when time is the asset that you can apply, time is something that can replace expertise, right? The
okay.
expert guitar maker is an expert because he can do it in 2 weeks. It may take me a year because I'm going to move very slowly through that, but that's because I'm using my resource of time to solve the problem.
Okay.
Once I started getting some experience as a maker, I still had the problem that materials, even $20 or $30 worth of materials, was way more than I could afford. So I would reach out to theater companies and I would say, "Hey, if you need some props made, I'll make them for free
Yeah.
if you buy me the materials, and then I get to keep the props when you're done, because I love making objects, but I really want them all back."
It's a really cool
And
thing that
they
you're telling, because, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
as I didn't have money to, I really love the SLP competitions of sound,
Hmm.
like the
Hmm.
bass. So I have this friend who had a lot of, and I use him for resources so I can create those things. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If you don't have
Yeah.
the resources, you have to find maybe somebody or something that can help you get the resources. That's a great idea. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, no, no. So here in San Francisco, when I was first here about 30 years ago, the trash company comes and takes out your trash every week, but everyone gathers like big pieces of furniture that they need to get rid of. So in San Francisco, once a year, there was a day called Trash Day. And that's when
Okay.
everyone put all of their old televisions and dresser drawers and beds out on the street, and the trash company would pick up everything. And we would always, my friends and I would always make sure we knew when trash day was, because that was how we furnished our apartments. It was how we built our shops and our studios. It was how frequently we found the electronics we needed, because a lot of people throw out things that they don't think. I remember getting my first VCR because someone threw it out because the door was stuck shut. I fixed
Okay.
that door and I had a VCR.
Wow, I love that. Now, talking about the internet, I think internet it's a great resource for learning how to make stuff, learning new techniques. But I think, because I create content on YouTube and teach people how to build things, sometimes also becomes a dampener for creativity.
Hmm.
People only look for entertainment, not for experimenting, and we have these channels that create experiments that don't work. That seems to work but don't work, so people
Yeah.
try to build those stuff, and they get frustrated because those are not real things to build. So I don't know, I want your opinion about this, because I think the internet is a great resource, but how can we, I don't know if the word is fight against these things.
Well, look, you and I make things and make videos about it for the same reason. We want to share what making has done for us, and we want to excite and inspire other people to enjoy the same experience. I think it is when looking at the internet as a whole, if it's possible, it's important to recognize that it is a very different experience for you and me as men than it is for, let's say, women or children or other people from different communities. And their experience might be vastly different than ours in terms of the response they get for what they make. Um, it's really, I mean, look, to me, the world is full of problems that could be solved if we listened to each other a little more carefully and tried to understand each other's experience at a deeper level. Um,
Okay.
One of the key things I would say about making stuff on the internet is not to read your own comments. And I am just as guilty of it as anybody else. But you'll read your comments because they feel good and you get that endorphin rush, and then you'll read some one person calling you an idiot and it's going to
Yeah, it's
stick
just
with
fun.
you, and that person does not deserve that power. They do not
Exactly.
deserve to
That's a
get
bad
into
thought.
your head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's horrible, right? You have all this positivity, and then just one comment, and that hits you
What's
really hard.
It does. Yeah.
Okay, so now the other side of the question is, what would you say to people that think that everything is already made, that everything is already
Ah,
done, that they can't create something new because everything is already exists?
yeah.
And also the problem is that people think that they want to create something out of not knowing anything. I mean, not getting any uh, knowledge about basic stuff. They want to just
Yeah.
have this eureka thing in their heads. So I think it's a problem. What would you say to those people that think that everything is already made, or that they can create without learning something?
Well, it's very well. So the first part, it's very human to think that I'm sure that in Rome 2,000 years ago, your average citizen was pretty sure that everything had been mostly discovered. I'm
Okay.
totally
Yeah.
sure of that. A Roman walking around the city full of, 30,000 people 2,000 years ago would have, oh yeah, there's the library, there's the bathroom, there's the showers. We've got it all figured out. Everybody has always thought that everything's been figured out. And the most exciting thing about making is when you realize how little of the landscape that we've actually covered. That, like, you listen to somebody else's music that you like, and after a few months of practice, you can start to make music that you like. You can start to make music that inspires you more than any other music you've ever heard. That's
Yeah.
an incredible feeling. That is like you're touching something that is, to me, one of the most important things there is when you get to that point where you realize that you can contribute, right? Because that's the thing. When you think everything's been discovered, what you're also thinking is, I have nothing to contribute here. And the answer is, yes, you do. I mean, only in the last 10 years have people figured out that crows and ravens can actually use tools. And the experiments that they did to understand how crows and ravens think are very simple. Reading into them, anybody could have done them, but nobody had. Uh,
Yeah.
Science is packed with things that have only recently been discovered that were surpassingly easy to notice, but no one took a look. Um, all really great creation and all really great discovery is just one person or one group of people zooming out and looking at things from a slightly different angle. And that's exploration. That's what we do as people. We do two things. We explore to the edges of the universe that we can see, and then we tell each other stories about it.
Okay. Okay. I think that has to do with, well, I have this idea that in Latin America, people, as I mentioned before, people are born makers. They know
Mm-hmm.
how to build stuff.
Yeah.
They're these platypus that I've mentioned, but they seek to be a payer and no longer a maker, to pay somebody to get better so they don't have to do these things.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't really like, because I like building stuff, and I don't know how to make people see that building stuff is it's something interesting and cool. And I don't know. I think that a lot of people seek to be a payer rather than a maker, at least here
Sure.
in country,
but
in my
but
country.
at the
So,
same time, they're going to pay our rent. They're going to pay our bills.
well,
You,
that's a good
you
thing.
need both of those things. I mean, it really is about
But
getting
the
people
thing
to
is
understand.
that maybe
Yeah.
you're losing some talent there, that they were told
Hmm.
that they
Hmm.
have to to work and make money, but they maybe they inside have this great maker or artist that will never make out to the
It's really
world.
true. And I mean, let's say you're a person who collects a certain kind of glass bottle. And you don't make glass bottles, but you love this particular type and you collect them. Over the years, as you collect them, you become an expert in that bottle. Your eyes get acclimatized to see things and details that no one else can see. You are at that moment very much closer to a maker than you might think, because a maker's eyes are the ones looking over the object that has been embedded in the head of the maker until they understand every last detail and why they're there. Uh, and
Yeah.
expertise, in a way, to me, is a sort of like a gateway drug to making. When you become obsessed with a category enough to kind of understand all of its internal mechanics, I, I'm a believer that the more times you look at something and its root systems and you break it down into its parts and then put it back together, the more you do that, the more you understand about how the world works.
Okay. Okay. That's great. And uh, for you, because you make me think, what is your creative process? For me, for example, it's like, and I'm pretty sure you know this concept of copy, transform, and combine. Like
Mm-hmm.
learning a new
Mm-hmm.
skill, then mixing it or changing that skill with something that you know, and then mixing
Yeah.
it with other skills you have. So I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, what is your creative process? What did you do to, and how it was changed, how it changed over time for you?
So can you tell me those three words again? Copy.
Yeah, copy, transform, and combine.
I love
Like
that. That is
it's like
wonderful.
you learn how to play guitar, then you
Hmm.
change the sound a little bit, and
Yep.
that's like
Yeah.
I don't know how they call them, those kind of songs that sound a little bit different, and
Uh-huh.
then you learn from other artists, and you combine all of these artists to create something new,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that applies to everything.
That's a beautiful. I love that copy transform. That's almost like the way doctors, right? See one, do one, teach one,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And
And
there really is in that last step that you wrote that you say combine. This is one of those things that's really interesting to me because when you take something and you combine it with other things, you you're placing it in a different context and you learn so much more when you put it together with other things. You learn, I mean, because you'll look at it and you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Well, that's information that teaches you something really important. Live with what kind of other objects it needs around it. Um, that that is absolutely, I think, a wonderful boiling down of exactly how we learn stuff. Really lovely.
yeah, and well, my brother, he's a doctor. He's an orthopedist. He works with the bones. Okay,
Okay.
so
Orthopedist,
I
yes.
think that he watched my dad also working with metal and cutting and using all these tools, and now
Mm-hmm.
he mixed that. He copied or he transformed into something that he can use, but with humans and with bones and with flesh. So he makes this world of um, building or repairing things in the real world, and now he, I don't know, he liked people and the human body, so he used
Yeah,
that
yeah.
thing to be like a carpenter of a human.
Right.
If that
And I'm
makes sense.
sure, no, that's wonderful. I'm sure your dad didn't think that he was making a doctor when he was showing him how to build stuff, but of course he was. The other thing that I love about making is it can be like a time machine. You you can
Okay.
copy a piece of furniture that you like, and halfway through that process, you're going to understand something about the person that made that piece of furniture that almost nobody else would understand because you're handling the
Okay.
same pieces of materials and wood and screws and process that they were. You're literally walking in their footprints. I have replicated pieces of furniture that were 70 or 80 years old. And at one point, I ran into a problem and I fixed it. And there was a remnant of the fix. There was like a mark where I had fixed it. And I found the same mark on the original thing that I was replicating. The maker of the original had run into the same problem I had and made the
Yeah.
same solution. And I didn't see it coming just as they didn't. And I walked in the same path.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, Alan, but it's been a pleasure being talking here with you. I think people learned a lot of stuff in this 35 minutes that we've been speaking. I really like to talk to you even more time, but we don't have enough time. So maybe next time, people, I don't know. It's great having you here. Thank you very much. And I don't know if you have anything else to say to the people, to the talents that are watching us.
Ricardo, I'll just tell you, your questions are so delightful. This has been the most fun conversation I've had in a while, and I really appreciate your dedication to inspiring people and getting everyone to understand their inner maker and the joys inherent in making. It's a great mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Es muy importante este